Hi, Shalom friends. You know, we have a very complicated relationship with our name. Let me explain what I mean by that. At first glance, a name is nothing more than a label. I mean, when you were born and you didn't have your name on the birth certificate, did that make you less of a human being? Or if you decide to change your name sometime during your lifetime, will that actually change you? And finally, if someone mispronounces your name, did they wound you? So obviously, from this perspective, a name is nothing more than a label, a handle, a means of identifying you from a crowd. But it really does not connect to your essence. Yet, from a different perspective, a name is very private and very meaningful. We like our name to be pronounced correctly. No, he doesn't wound you, but if it's mispronounced, we wince. If someone remembers our name, we're impressed. And subconsciously, we value that person more because they remembered my name. But they know nothing about me. I might have people that know me and appreciate me a lot more, but if they can't remember my name in some form or manner, it affects me, it bothers me. So what is a name? Today it's actually very, very prevalent for people to have a real name and then a fictitious name. Hundreds of millions of people that use social media don't even use their real name. And yet, paradoxically, their true essence gets revealed in their chats and in their dialogues, but not their real name. We have many famous personalities, actors, authors, and they don't use their real name. They use a stage name. And yet, when they're home with their closest friends and closest intimates, they have their real name. So what is a name? Who is a name? What is a name? Why is it so both meaningful and superficial at the same time? Imagine you go into a party, you meet a stranger, you say, "Hi, my name is Bob. Very pleased to meet you. What's your name?" He says, 102-345-78910. And you say, "Excuse me? I asked you, do you have a name?" He said, "I gave you my social security number. If I gave you my name, you will know nothing about me. I might make it up. But if I gave you my social security number, man, I trust you. You could access everything about my financial world from my social security number." Yeah, but what's your name? Isn't that strange? The person could give you a key to his bank account, and you still want to know his name. So what is this thing of a name? I point out that the Almighty God himself, who existed before creation, every day in our prayers we say, "Adon Olam Asher Malach B'Terem Kol Yitzur Nivra." He was the everlasting and eternal God even before there was subjects, even before there was creation. So God existed before his names existed. Well, there's much Kabbalah and Hasidus to discuss, but I will not be doing that. And in this broadcast, rather, I'd like to focus on one particular aspect of a name. And that is, we Jewish people have actually two names. We have the Hebrew name that we're given, and that's incidentally a very beautiful concept, because when you're given a Jewish name, there's a link to the past. Every Abraham, every Sarah, every Zalman, every Shoshana has a past. It's either a grandfather, a grandmother, an aunt, an uncle, a biblical figure. So you don't exist in a vacuum. I really don't know how it is in conventional life, but I don't believe I've ever heard one stranger meet another and say, "Hi, what's your name?" "My name is Bob." "Oh, who are you named after?" I mean, who am I named after? My name is Bob. My parents chose it. They're like Bob. But when you say, you meet a Jew and he says, "Hi, my name is Velvel," you say, "What a nice name. Who in the family is called Velvel?" And then suddenly you get a history of his great-grandfather. "Oh, I had a great-grandfather. His name was Velvel, and they called him Zev, and he lived in Ashtetl." Man, all I asked you for your name, but Velvel is not just a name. It's a history. In addition to the Hebrew name that we're given, we're also given a name called Yehudi, Jew. A baby that's born to a Jewish mother is given a name. Du bist a Yid, you are a Jew. And very often that name, which is really a fundamental definition of who I am, is something, though it's not always spoken about. In fact, at times, it could be used as a nickname. My real name is Bob Smith. By the way, I happen to be Jewish. So you're using Judaism and "I am a Jew" as a nickname, as an additional name, as an additional layer to what you really are. But actually, that name, Jew, is really what defines you. There are many ways to illustrate this and to demonstrate it, both in the negative through suffering, but I'd like to share with you in a manner of much more pleasant. I heard the story from the rabbi himself who was there. He once came to a social gathering where it was mostly retirees, and there were people playing cards and checkers and chess and everything else, and this rabbi at the time of the story was actually a young man of maybe 17 or 18. He had his tefillin with him, and he went around and he said, "Excuse me, would you like to maybe put on tefillin?" Many said yes, and others smiled at him very nicely and said, "No, not today, now I'm not in the mood." Okay, you don't push, you just invite. When he came to one person and he said, "How about you?" The man answered very abruptly, "I don't do tefillin." And that sort of disturbed the boy. I mean, if you say, "I'm busy," with a smile, or "not now," or even "I don't believe." But what do you mean? So he asked, "What do you mean you don't do tefillin?" "I told you I don't do tefillin." And he spoke loud and got a little bit upset. So the boy retreated. But to his surprise, someone else got up and went over to him and said, I don't know what his name was, Shimon. He says, "You don't do tefillin? Does a Gentile put on tefillin? Does a non-Jew put on tefillin? They don't put on tefillin. You could choose not to put on tefillin, but don't say you don't do tefillin, because Jews do put on tefillin." And to his amazement, he called back the boy and he said, I am a Jew. I want to put on tefillin. You could probably read into the story many layers of interpretation, but to me, something very blatant seems to be being proclaimed. And that is, when you tell a person, "Do you have time for tefillin?" Are you religiously inclined for tefillin? Do you find tefillin meaningful and significant? People begin to hesitate and they begin to evaluate. But if you ask a person, "Are you Jewish or not?" there's only one answer: "I am." Well, if you are, Jews put on tefillin. It is amazing to me that people who forgot their main name, that they are Jewish, often rediscover that name later in life. Sometimes through the birth of a child, they are reminded of their name. I just gave birth to a Jewish kid. Sometimes it is a death of a loved one. And somehow it's like, wow, I'm the last Jew in this family line. And sometimes it is a holiday that just awakens by them this feeling of what a wonderful people I come from. I remember when one of the Twerskys, I think his name is, he's a rabbi and a brilliant lawyer, with Ahron Twersky, when he was became the dean of Hecht University, the law department. One of his articles was that his concern that his newfound fame and his new job might confuse his essence. And he illustrated it with the following. He said, my father had a shamash, a very simple man in the synagogue. Didn't have much Torah knowledge, but he was Jewish from every fiber of his body. There wasn't a cell that he possessed that did not say, I am Jewish. And Ahron Twersky writes this. He says, if they would have woken up him at night and say, who are you? His first thought would have been, I'm a Jew. And then he would have said his name. He said, I'm concerned that now that I have this awesome responsibility of being the dean of a law school, if they wake me up, they say, who are you? I might say, the dean of a school, rather than saying who I truly am, which is, Ich bin a Yid, I am a Jew. I'd like to end with, I mentioned, we all have two names. We're born and we're given the name Jew, or Yehudi, and then we have a second name, which is given to us by our parents, and hopefully we have a Jewish name. So if you're Bob, maybe you're really Baruch, or in addition to that. But let me tell you what the Midrash says. There are actually three names. The name that you're given by birth. And then there's the name that people call you. Some of us have nicknames or additional names that we're known by, and it's not even our name. For example, for me personally, my formal name is Ahron, which is, of course, the brother of Moshe. But all of my friends, and I grew up with the word Ari, which actually has nothing to do with Ahron. It's just a diminutive of it. So there's the name that you're given, the name that you're called by. But you know what's the most powerful name? The name that people will remember you by. What we would call a reputation. What we would call a remembrance. It's important for us to remember that if we want to be remembered properly, we should never forget our primary name, which is we were born a Yehudi. Shalom.